Cool. So let's go ahead and first we'll talk about what we think would be a fair wage to compromise at based off the case study.
I think that maybe just a little bit above minimum wage. So it says that the base wage is 1069.
Mhm.
So I feel like maybe just round it up to like 11, just so that it's like a solid number.
Okay.
What are the employees wanting?
Um, I think that the employees just feel like they deserve just a little bit more because of all the manual labor that they're having to do.
Okay.
Like they feel like their time is more valuable than what they're being given.
Okay. Do you know, because I remember in like one of the readings, it talked about how on the management side of things, they wanted to reduce, or like they have a clause in the agreement that basically says that they take the average of the top 5 companies, and then we
Mhm.
can pay that to employees. And like based off of the average, I think it was like 8-ish, and management wanted to push for that so that way they could continue to like be in business basically, because it's kind of a hard market for processed foods.
Mhm.
And so like I guess the question is like, would you guys be willing to compromise to something a little bit closer to the average, or is that like something you guys wouldn't have?
I think that I agree with you. I think that that's something that like could be worked or agreed upon.
Okay. Catherine, what are your thoughts?
This is kind of weird having a debate. But so I feel like from the management perspective, if we're able to talk about some of the other points of the contract, like how we hire and the working rules and production level, I feel like we'll be able to be willing to make more concessions on the wage. Because, like, right now, according to the text, the labor cost is already the high, like, our labor cost for the company is already the highest in the industry.
Mm-hmm.
Like, we're already paying more than most companies do.
Uh-huh.
Mhm.
But we're willing to keep that as long as we we're able to come to terms with some of the other things that we're looking at. Does that make sense?
Definitely. And that was kind of my thought too, because like I think if I remember reading in the case study, it talked about how like we're not doing poorly as a company. They just want to maybe do these cuts as like more of a preventative sort of measure. But I thought it was interesting that they want to do pay cuts because I know it's protective against like what could happen, but it's been from my understanding from everything that I've kind of learned is that if you pay your employees more to kind of take the burden of life stresses off their plate, they actually perform to a lot higher standard, and you might be
Mhm.
able to, compensate. But the only counter argument to that is it sounds like the processing food industry isn't a year-round like full swing sort of thing. So it's like overproduction. Like if you do pay your employees and they are overproducing, it may come back as, okay, we've almost done too much and now our workforce doesn't have enough work during the off track, I guess, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
And so I don't know, it's kind of finding that balance between like, okay, they meet our standards, our wages aren't putting us at risk. And so I guess as like management and a hypothetical union or whatever, like what's going to be the best, so that way we can continue to employ these people, but also not overpay or underpay them. So what do you guys think?
I think there needs to be like obviously there needs to be a contract set um where like it's understood by both employers and employees like what's expected and what they're going to get from the job.
Definitely.
I think it
So
needs to be, I definitely think it needs to be stipulated within the contract.
definitely. And I think that's like our goal is like to hypothetically come up with a contract that like seems fair to both sides. And so I guess like for wages, like for me, I think that paying the average or like the just above the average would probably be best to like protect like the company's interest and make sure the employees aren't, uh, I guess getting screwed. But it sounded like in the case that from what I was reading that the employees weren't very happy that they could average below because that whole clause was to protect them. But since the
Mm-hmm.
industry average was lower, your wages are getting cut. And so like if you were in that position where your employer was going to like cut your pay, would you be like upset about that, or would you want more money, or what would, because like if you go from $10 to $8, like that's a 20% decrease. And so is that
Mm-hmm.
something that you'd be willing to take, or is that something that you'd say no, like we are doing fine as a company, we deserve the 10? What were your thoughts beyond that?
I don't think a 20% pay decrease is fair.
Okay. So what if you were to like give us a number, what would it be, you think?
Like for a decrease?
Yeah, because technically since like the clause brings your wages down to the average, which would be roughly about, $8 or whatever it is, or I can't remember exactly what the average is. Would you want to push for higher than the average? Would you want to push, for the same wages that you're making, like no decrease, or like what would your thoughts be?
I don't even think that there should be a decrease unless like something is really wrong, but
Okay.
What if instead of, like, what if we did like a 15% decrease? Like maybe a little over $8, but then we talked about benefits, like other things besides the wage. Would you be willing? Because like right now, from what I understand, we pay more. We pay our employees more than anybody else in the industry. So like
yeah.
Like I understand where you're like, yeah.
No, I think that that's fair. I think that like if there has to be a decrease to like ensure that the company like is stable, then yeah, I would do that.
Awesome. So I think we can kind of wrap up. But what's kind of like we'll set would say like above the average. So we'll do maybe I don't know.
850?
Yeah, 850. Like let's say the average. We'll say like a little bit above the average, and I'll go in and actually run the average between the 5 companies, and then do an addition to that, and we'll call that and I'll let you guys know what that wage is. But
Okay.
I think the point of the exercise is to kind of like get an idea of where like you might be coming from. But the problem with the hypothetical situation is like if I was getting a pay cut, like I would be fighting really, really hard to ensure that I continue to get paid the same amount, because like a 25% decrease or even a 15% decrease,
That's a lot.
it is a lot. It's like if you're making $400, a week, that takes you down to almost like 320. That's an $80 difference. And if you're only making $300 or $400 a week, I mean, that's hard to, raise kids or like have, I mean, that's like even a lot for like, that's hard for a single person to live off of. So anyways, just things to consider. I guess, oh, go ahead, Catherine.
I don't know. I was just gonna say, like, if we're thinking about this abstractly, like, it would be so hard for like management. It like once you give a company something, like, it's hard to take away. Do you know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
Even
Yeah.
if maybe it is, even if you are trying to match what the rest of the industry is doing,
Mm-hmm.
you're gonna have to, because people feel like, I don't know if this is the right word, but kind of like entitled, like they've been having that amount.
Yeah.
So there's always going to be resistance to that.
Definitely.
Totally.
And that's kind of what they talked about in the case. Like, I can't remember which clause it is specifically. I can pull it up really quick. Let me double check so I can. It's called the Me Too clause, and it basically says that like the Baxter company will like average the top 5 food processing companies, and then like, but the whole point of that clause was actually to be a protection. So that way, like, if for instance, you know, if like the top 5 companies increase their wages, you know, and they're paying their employees more, then the Baxter company has to increase their wages to keep up with that like standard, you know, for inflation and different things. And so it was supposed to be a protection, but it actually ended up kind of backfiring on the local 190. And to me, like, that would piss me off if there was supposed to be something in there protecting my wages and that backfired on me, and then the company says, "Oh, we're gonna pull some of your money." I'd be livid. I wouldn't put up with it. So. Anyways, so moving on to the second part of the discussion, and we can just blow through this, and then we'll wrap up.
Okay.
We're supposed to also do the debriefing portion of it. We were supposed to do all the readings for this, and I didn't do all the readings. I thought this is like a weird one, and so I didn't know. Well, I guess maybe step 4 is actually after we do the stuff, but. Anyways, so let's discuss the several different things that are in that list. Let's look at them really quick. So layoff and hiring procedures, incentive programs, work rule, wages. We'll just talk about all those things and see kind of what the consensus is on those. So let me see here, see if we can kind of come up with something. So when it comes to layering or layoffs and hiring, I think that if I remember right, the company basically they want to shift from a no layoffs policy to a 52-week layoff like notice requirement. And so what that means for you, Allie, is that, you know, instead of being protected from ever getting laid off, we would say, okay, we only need to give you 52-week notice, and then we can lay you off. And so, like, what's that?
I feel like that's a long time. 52 weeks?
It is 52 weeks. I mean, that's like what? How many months is that? Let me divide it out here. I think that's almost 3 months.
Yeah.
So let's do 52 divided by 4. That's like over a year if I calculated that accurately.
A long time.
So that's like, so basically you'd have a year to find new work. Like, is that something that you guys would be okay with doing, or is there something that you guys would prefer to have instead of that policy?
I mean, I just feel like that's a really long way to freaking I don't know why I just said freaking. That was stupid. I feel like that's a lot of time in advance to like give someone notice for being laid off. Like, it should, I mean,
but
in the real world,
that would benefit you.
Yeah, it would, but I mean, I guess that's true. Like, if it's going to benefit like the employers and give them time to find a real job, I guess that's a fair stipulation.
Mm-hmm.
Another thing that the management talked about was the fact that people that have worked for the company for forever, like seniority, some of the benefits that they have. So like some of the best employees are the ones that we've recently hired. And so like, I guess maybe cutting down on some of the, benefits that senior people have, making it more fair and hiring people based on their ability rather than how long they've worked there.
Yeah, I would agree.
So, you know, I guess to put it in perspective for you, like, let's say you're, I'm gonna start kind of writing some notes down so that way I can keep track of what we're doing in case you have to do the contract. So you are okay with the 52-week program? Seems reasonable. So when it comes to this, like imagine you're a 45-year-old dude, right? And you're not quite as, productive as a young buck. And like the company comes and says like, okay, like in this contract, we reserve the right to like get rid of you because there's a younger employee that works harder than you. Is that like, is that reasonable? Or is it like, okay, well, like obviously, my age has something to do with that productivity and like you can't necessarily control that. So is that like fair to you? And if it's not, like you have to kind of argue that side of things, if that makes sense.
I mean, 52 weeks is a long time, so it would probably be really easy to find like a new job in the process.
Gotcha. And like, for example, let's say like the job market, like, because during this time and they're experiencing a recession and it's like a town that this is like one of the sole like sources of income. Like it's not, it's kind of like a work town. And so imagine if you're like 46 years old or whatever, and they put you out on your butt and yeah, they give you a year to do it, but there's really not a whole lot to do. Like, would you still kind of feel the same way? I guess I'm just playing devil's advocate to get kind of some good,
Argument.
yeah, get a good argument. Cause like, you're like the easiest union I think anybody ever had to deal with in a good way.
We're just not confrontational.
Yeah, this is too smoothly.
I don't know. I don't really know how to argue because I agree with everything that's being presented.
Okay. Well, and that's good. If that's the case, like if you think that's reasonable, like that's totally cool. I just, like I said, I'm trying to kind of play the devil's advocate and get, because there are things like, I don't know if it's completely situational, but if I was a 46-year-old dude that worked hard his whole life and provided for the company, I wouldn't want my company to like put me out on my butt, so I guess it's just a difference in perspective.
I'd want, if I was an employee, I'd want some hardcore evidence that these people were outperforming me.
Gotcha. Like that it's a dramatic difference.
Yeah.
So there would have to be,
because there's always what we talk about that in, maybe we talked about this before, but there's like a bias against people that are older. Even though they
work just as hard.
Yeah.
Gotcha. So I think that's an important thing to note. I think that's a really good point. We'll maybe consider that in the contract that like if you are, going to, base, hiring and firing off of performance, that there has to be tangible evidence.
Yep.
Yeah, I'd agree with that.
I think that's a really good one. So, and then and I'm going to kind of argue this side of things because they have the Me Too agreement. Which is basically the one about the wages where they can fluctuate.
Okay.
Based off of like the kind of like the industry, I guess. I'll be honest, I do not like that. If I were on your side of things, just because like your wages, like what you put into, like what the company gets out of their production does not affect how much you work. Because if you put in the same amount of work and yet you're going to get paid less just because like the industry is suffering, like that's not your fault. And like there are people that are higher up in the company that can take a hit and I can't take the hit. If I'm working for $10 an hour or whatever and they're making $500,000 a month, like they can take the hit. I'm not going to be the one that takes a hit. And so if it was me, I would get rid of the Me Too clause, but that's just my 2 cents. Catherine or Allie, what do you guys think?
No, I would agree. I would agree with you on that.
I think that's interesting because I think it was last week we talked about how we did want some of their wage, or like we kind of agreed that we wanted some of their wage to be on. A lot of that does have to do with the economy and stuff. But I hadn't really thought about it, that those that are making more money probably can take that fluctuation. Whereas, the common worker working on the production line or something, that would make a bigger difference for them.
Definitely. Well, and that's the thing is like, if the management at Baxter truly cares about their employees, in my opinion, they're going to make sure that they can do whatever they can to keep those wages stable, because it just doesn't make sense to base it relative to the market, because people just suffer too much from that clause. And so if it was me, I'm going to argue for the Baxter 190 or whatever, and I'm going to get rid of the Me Too clause.
Okay.
Because
I feel like that's fair.
I think that's bogus, I'll be honest. And I don't know. I'm more, as I'm learning more about IO, if I ever open up an establishment, I'm going to do whatever I can to make sure my employees are happy. Because I just feel like that's such a better approach to the organization.
Oh, 100%.
You know, I think everybody wins in that context. So anything else that you guys may have?
Well, I guess my only argument against getting rid of it completely was kind of what we talked about last week, how sometimes, yes, there are things that happen in the market that you can't anticipate, but also as a whole, you should be working to be the best, competitive. And so I think it, in a way, it could motivate employees to do their best.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
As like an incentive,
Yeah. The only. Oh, go ahead, Allie.
I definitely think though that like when there's like, I don't know, like a motivational like standard for the like for the company, then things tend to get done a lot quicker. If that makes sense. Like if there's, it's kind of like like if you're a kid and you're a mom and you're bribing your child, like, okay, well, if you clean your room, then you get blah, blah, blah. It's kind of like this thing in a company. Like if there's a reward, then obviously things are going to get done in a more timely fashion.
So maybe what were the exact stipulations for the Me Too clause?
So let me double check here. So the Me Too clause, it says this clause pegged Baxter wages and benefits to those of the top 5 customer food processing companies. It specified that 3 or more of the 5 industry leaders change their wages or benefits. The union will identify the 3 companies whose provisions it most prefers. So it's basically like whoever they select, and then they will average those 3. And so they'd probably average the 3 best. And then they would, say that you need to provide these wages and these benefits, and then their base rates were $10.69 an hour. I can't remember. Let me make sure I've got the right one pulled up here.
So what if we did like where maybe their wages have to do more with like an increase in production versus comparing it of the people in the market. So measuring progress in your own company versus others.
I think that's smart, because the thing is like you could be working extremely hard, but if you're at the end of the day, like you're still going to get what the average is for the other people. And if they're performing poorly, it makes no sense to work hard at that point. And so I just feel like that's going to really have an effect on how the company functions if they don't fix that. And so I would say, like you said, like if you're basing performance off of, if you base performance off of your own company to like determine wages, I think that's way smarter.
Yeah, I agree.
I'll write that one down. I like that more than the other 2.
Sorry, I'm just getting ready to go to my other meeting.
Oh, you're fine.
I need this semester to be over.
We just have the incentive program and work goals left.
Okay, I'm going to have to go in like 5 minutes.
That's okay. We'll just go over the incentive programs, and then Catherine and I can do work rules.
Okay.
So So it sounds like the labor union or whatever, they feel very strongly that like the incentive systems is unacceptable. And it says that I'm not sure. So it says giving up speed and flexibility. Trying to see what they're actually fighting for. Catherine, do you know what their argument is?
Well, it doesn't really say specific incentives, but just looking at it,
Quota incentives?
It sounds like maybe what's being argued is more work, like the workers having more autonomy versus the company. And I think obviously from a company, like from the management standpoint, they're going to want more power and control over like when they get to have breaks and how fast they get to go. But like from the workers' perspective, they are wanting to decide when they have their own breaks and things like that.
Gotcha.
Is that?
Yeah, no, and I think honestly, I'm a big advocate for autonomy. So it says, I'm trying to see what our perspective is so I can argue that. So it sounds like what we're planning on doing is, since we are like changing to the new plant, there's gonna be a lot more rules, a lot more, training, stuff like that people need to abide by.
Yeah.
And so, I guess, but my thing is I'm like a big, believer in like the principle of like, you train them, you do everything you can to train them, and then you kind of let them govern themselves, because I feel like people really, when they feel like they're in control of their occupations, do a lot better. But I know that especially in like an industry like this, that there's going to be a need for rules. And so I think the delegation of making sure that there are people that are monitoring and making sure that people are doing all their stuff, but not getting over crazy with that, because I know that could have a huge impact on the employees, production, stuff like that.
So it sounds like to me that when they moved the workers to the new plant, because the technology was more up to date, they're finding that there's less manual labor, and like you said, there's more rules that the management wants to put in place.
Yeah.
So I guess a way to compromise that would be, having more structure, having more rules on like safety procedures and things like that, but also being open to feedback from those that work on the line on a more innovative way of how to do it. You know what I'm saying?
Definitely.
So that way, like, it's all unified. You're all doing it the same way, but there's still that open communication that says, well, hey, you know best. If you know a better way to figure it out, then let us know and we'll change it.
Yeah, totally. I definitely think being unified, like as a company front, is the best way to go about it.
Cool. So basically, rules plus open feedback to change if rules aren't working.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that's awesome. I mean, that's smart.
Well, I think from the management perspective, I can see how they feel that since technology is more advanced in the new plant, they don't really see a need for as much breaks and things like that.
Yeah.
But like you said, Brenton, you want the workers to feel like they're in control.
Yep.
And they're taking the time that they need. So I'm not really sure what we could do to compromise that.
I think that's a really smart way to go about it, honestly, because like you said, it provides them with the structure and the rules that they need, but also makes them feel like they're not just being freaking taken advantage of, or like just having to abide whatever, because you may not understand the rules, and if there are better ways, we want to hear that, from the employees. It'll make them feel involved, and it'll help them to exercise that autonomy, I guess, a little bit.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So, Allie, do you need to peace out?
Yeah, I do. I'm already going to be late.
Okay, cool. Well, hey, we'll let you get going, but good luck with the rest of this week. Also, just keep in mind, doohickeys, try to get those to me if you can Sunday afternoon, so that way I can edit the document and send it in.
Perfect. I can do that.
Cool. All right, guys.
Which section am I writing about, though?
I can't remember. I'm writing about this one that we're doing right now, and so I think, Catherine, do you know which one you're doing?
I'm doing the.
I remember you have yours pulled up on the Google Doc.
Yeah. So the 3 topics are. So I think you're doing, Allie, discipline and wages. So what we covered last week. Okay, perfect.
Sweet.
All right, awesome. Thanks so much, guys.
Yep, totally. Good luck with everything. Hopefully, in the semester goes nice and smooth for you. I know it's getting a little crazy.
Yeah. I know. Okay, I'll talk to you guys later. Thanks.
See ya.
Bye.
Did you get the Google Doc that I sent last night?
I did, yeah.
Okay, good.
So we just have the last topic, and then we can, I don't know, chit chat for a minute and kill some time, make it look like we're super chatty.
Work
kidding.
rules.
Okay, I keep losing my tab.
Wait, did we already talk about this?
Maybe.
Maybe it's a little different.
So work rules. Oh, we need to talk. Oh, so we did wages, we did work rules, we did more or less incentive programs.
Mm-hmm.
It sounds like they kind of, if we're doing the base pay and like things are good, it's like they want the incentive, which I think is I don't know, I think that's completely reasonable. And then it looks like layoff and hiring procedures, which we covered that, which is good. But trying to think, I think we actually mainly covered everything.
So under work rules, it says that the new plant requires employees to be trained in multiple positions. So I guess that's just another reason why the management is wanting to standardize the work rules. Because it sounds like with the new plant that they're having to not work as hard like physically, but maybe be more flexible.
No, I think that kind of comes back to like what you were talking about. Like they abide by the rules, but if they have a better approach, like not that they go and do that, but that they propose it and that management is willing to listen to them and maybe even take it one step further and, like would say not necessarily pay them, but they see some sort of benefit from coming up with that, new approach, because if it helps the company, then everybody wins.
Yeah, definitely.
So I think that was a really creative way to approach that, because it kind of encompasses the, like, when you make goals in a company, you can't just like develop a goal, implement it, and expect everybody to adopt it, because it's just not how it works. But people are far more likely to adopt those goals if they've been included in the process. And I think the same would come with like procedures and rules. Like if they feel like, okay, we've had our say in what's going on, I think they're a lot more likely to abide by those rules a little bit.
Yeah.
So anyways, that's all I can think of. I think if we need to, we can kind of go back through and like look at the video for like any sort of feedback, but I did write down a couple notes from like what we discussed as a group and kind of the things that we can do different or whatever, in the contract. I don't know if she's going to have us submit a contract, because like I said, I think actually I'll just pull it up and read it really quick. I'll pull up my Google Plus account really fast. By the way, how did your exam go yesterday?
Which one?
For Sister Roberts.
Honestly, I'm a little frustrated because I went to tutoring once a week as kind of hopes that I would get a better grade.
And
I got the same grade that I've been getting on all the tests. So
It sucks, huh?
yeah, well, but like, I guess I should have anticipated that because tutoring, like I told you before, it wasn't super helpful. They were just reading the lecture notes, like literally the same lecture notes again. And I was like,
Yeah. That's kind of what I noticed, especially from this one. Usually when I go down there, she'll give me like stuff that's better, you know, than the what Sister Roberts will, or like shorthand or like whatever. But this time around, it really was almost word for word what she had talked about. Sorry, I'm kind of reading as I'm talking here, but I had the exact same issue. I got an 89 on it, and that's the same, literally, like not even kidding, it's the exact same score I've gotten on every other test. And so I can't break the mark. And like I went back and like kind of looked up some of the material that I didn't know, and they were just silly little errors, you know, like, and I felt like she had a lot of the answers on this test were like the more right answer, if that makes sense.
yeah.
So I was a little bit frustrated, and I don't know. I'm kind of, I don't like how I can't get A's on these exams. For me, like that's pretty frustrating because I feel like the material's not really that hard, but the fact that we had, I know I'm complaining on our live feeds, which I shouldn't be, but we had those two assignments that were due the week of the exam, and those were like, those PQs take a while to get done.
They do, yeah.
So that was a little bit hard to all do at the same time. But anyways.
Yeah, it's frustrating. I don't know what I'm gonna do this next unit to
do differently.
Yeah.
See, and that's kind of what I'm doing too. Because if I can get my grade with like, if I do the extra credit, I'm having somebody come in, and like if I do the extra credit and do like good on this next exam, like the same score that I've been getting, like I'll have an A in the class and like I can be done with it. But I don't know if I really like the structure of the course, because I don't like taking lots of notes, and I don't really like the style of learning. Like I usually like reading and applying, if that makes sense. Like Brother Dalton, I really like how he just has us read and like take what we need to from the material, and then like we apply that to like whatever we want to gain from that, if that makes sense. So I've kind of adopted his style of teaching more so than the whole note-taking business.
Yeah.
So anyways, so it says please, you will need 2 group leaders for discussion. Each will turn in a DL paper, and then in parentheses, unless you've already turned in 2. And all of us have done 2 group leader assignments. And so
about that.
Oh, so did she get back to you?
Let me check.
Because I was gonna say, I assume that's like if you've done 2, then you don't have to, but I don't know what that means exactly.
Yeah. She hasn't gotten back to me.
Okay. Well, I'm sure she will. She's really good about getting back to us on her emails. Like she's usually like even within the same day. So.
Okay. Well, yeah, just let me know. I'll let you. I guess I'll let you know what she says.
Definitely. And then also, if you want to, if you like, I don't know if you like the whole study buddy method, but if that helps you to like study the material for the test, let me know. And sometimes like this week I met with Lee, and she had some pretty good stuff that was helpful and stuff like that. So I don't know if that'll help on the next exam, but if you want to get together, let me know.
For developmental psych?
Yeah.
Oh yeah. Yeah, that would be good.
So, because I don't know, I'm in the same boat. Like I don't like when I can't change my score if I'm doing more stuff.
Yeah.
So cool. All right. Well, have a good afternoon. I will see you next week, and I don't think there's anything else.
Yeah.
So
All
cool.
right. See you later.
See ya.